Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hey, everybody. I hope you're all having just beautiful weeks. It's funny. I had allotted this time on my calendar to record this podcast because it's Friday and I need to get it to my podcast manager so we can release next week. And my kids are going to be home soon. And then the house is kind of just loud for the rest of the day. So I was like, I'm going to record it during this hour. And then there was just so much gardener noise for some of my neighbors, like lawnmowers and blowers and all kinds of things. And I was thinking, I guess I'm just going to record with a ton of background noise. But then suddenly, I guess everyone turned off their stuff. So here I am. So there's some behind the scenes for you today. So I was thinking about what I wanted to cover. I was thinking about some topics that I've just been meaning to cover in general. I was thinking about various topics that my clients have been struggling with, that I've been working on with them, and what lessons I could bring to you from my time with them. And honestly, I just kept feeling like I wasn't in the mood to talk about any of it. And I asked myself what really felt like it had resonance to me today, this morning, this week. And I found myself really wanting to talk about a season that I have been finding myself in. And in this season of my life, I am making some changes to some of my core habits. I'm sure I will talk about this more in a more specific way over time. But for now, I'm kind of keeping the details close to the vest. But I'm making some changes in some of my core habits and practices in the world. And I'm really not seeing results on the outside yet for me. And for me right now, I actually feel okay with that because I feel very clear that I am going in the right direction and that I am doing the right things. It just feels like it's taking a sec for those changes to translate into progress in the outside world. And I was thinking about the fact that I feel very at peace with that in this particular season, but I know that many of us go through seasons like that and we don't feel at peace. I have witnessed many of my clients feel frustrated in seasons like this, where they, again, are taking action but not seeing results yet. I suspect that many of you have felt frustrated in seasons like this. So I thought I would share two ideas that have been very top of mind for me recently that have really helped me to feel okay with this season of kind of taking some action without really seeing that outside progress or those outside results just yet. It turns out that both of the concepts that have been the most helpful, the most nourishing, the most supportive to me are from this book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And honestly, when I realized that, I kind of hesitated to make this episode at all because Atomic Habits, for those of you who know, is probably one of the most widely read self-development books of the past decade or so. So many of you have probably already read it, but it also happens to just be quite good. James Clear, he doesn't necessarily share any kind of shocking or radically new ideas in it, but he really has a knack for images and metaphors and phrasing things in a way that really sticks with you. So I just decided that, you know what, even if you have read the book, it's so good that maybe even just hearing a few of those ideas filtered through me with my own perspective on them, maybe they'll just be a helpful reminder for you. So I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to share two of his ideas that have really stuck with me, that have helped me a ton in this time when, again, I'm taking action, but I'm not necessarily seeing a ton of results yet, in the hopes that when you find yourself in a similar position, because this is such a human season and position to find ourselves in, we all find ourselves in seasons like this. I hope that they will help you too. So, two ideas. The first one that I want to share is an extended metaphor. Perhaps one of the most famous extended metaphors from Atomic Habits, but that's because it's really good. So this metaphor starts with imagining a room that is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. This room is so cold that at this point you can see your breath in the room. You're genuinely quite cold in this room. And imagine that there's an ice cube in this room and your goal is to melt the ice cube. So to melt the ice cube, you start heating the room up. You take the room from 25 to 26 degrees Fahrenheit. That actually takes quite a bit of energy, increasing that temperature of the room by even 1 degree. But if you looked at the ice cube in front of you after heating that room from 25 to 26 degrees, nothing much would change. The ice cube will still be completely frozen in front of you. You would see no outside progress at all. Now let's imagine that you heat the room up by another degree. 26 degrees to 27 degrees. Again, that requires a fair amount of energy. And again, you would notice basically no change in the ice cube, and the room, it would still be cold. So again, if your goal was to melt the ice cube, you have not succeeded, and you basically have not even made any visible progress. The ice cube is just completely frozen still. Okay, so now you increase the temperature of the room by 27 to 28 degrees. Still nothing. 28 to 29 degrees, still nothing. 29 to 30 degrees, nothing. Again, energy is required at each point in there, but no change has occurred in the ice cube in front of you. You have, on some level, failed from an outside perspective at your goal. So if your goal was to melt that ice cube, you might be feeling so discouraged. You've put all this energy into this room. You've increased the temperature by degree after degree after degree after degree, and the ice cube is still frozen solid. So if somehow, despite all of this frustration, all of this supposedly wasted effort, you muster the strength of spirit to keep going, maybe at this point, you increase the temperature of the room from 30 degrees to 31 degrees. And still, nothing, nada. Perhaps just about to give up. In a last-ditch effort, you increase the room temperature from 31 degrees to 32. And then, miraculously, perhaps even seemingly randomly, if you didn't happen to know that the melting temperature of water is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, seemingly miraculously, the ice would start to melt. On one hand, nothing so different has happened. You've just kept increasing that temperature just like you've been increasing it before, degree by degree, except now, finally, you see progress. So James Clear says about this in his book, and I'm just going to read a little short paragraph to you because I think it's so well said. He says, habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. In the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often a valley of disappointment. Okay, side note for me, valley of disappointment. So good. Back to James now. You expect to make progress in a linear fashion, and it's frustrating how ineffective changes can seem during the first few days, week, even months. It doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. It's a hallmark of any compounding process. The most powerful outcomes are delayed. Oh, team, I love that. I love this metaphor because I think whenever we want to change, there will be a period, sometimes a short period, but other times a very extended period where we are just heating the room from 25 to 26 to 27 to 28 to 29 degrees. And yeah, we are not going to see progress yet. It is not the time for us to see progress yet. And I love how he calls it the valley of disappointment because isn't that how it feels to all of us? But also, it does not mean that your effort was wasted. It just means that you aren't going to see progress yet. You have not gotten the room hot enough to see progress yet. He even has another quote about this that I love so much. I'm also just going to read it to you straight. He says, complaining about not achieving success despite working hard is like complaining about an ice cube not melting when you have heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work is not wasted. It is just being stored. Your work is not wasted. It is just being stored. I love that. So that's the first concept that has really, really helped me. I often think of this ice cube. I often think that my work is not wasted. It's just being stored. We're just not at 32 degrees yet. I hope it will bring you strength and support when you need it. So that's the first concept, as I said. The second concept that I often think about these days, it's honestly just a single sentence from Atomic Habits. It's become kind of like a mantra to me, and I'll read it to you now. Here it is. Your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. I'm going to say that one again. Your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. And in case what is meant by that is not immediately clear, I think it can be helpful to kind of make that more specific. So first of all, your productivity is a lagging measure of your working habits. That means that you're only going to have really good productivity, only have accomplished a lot after you've had good working habits for some time. Your clutter might be a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. So if you have good cleaning habits for a long time, the lagging measure of that is going to be that you have a decluttered home. If you have bad cleaning habits for a long time, the lagging measure of that is going to be a lot of clutter. Your net worth, it's a lagging measure of your financial habits. You will only have, good net worth, plenty of money in the bank after you've had good financial habits for some time. And of course, the situation, it's always more complex than that. There are, of course, things outside of our control that are not 100% dependent on our habits. But there's also a way in which I have experienced, and I'm sure you have too, that is also true, that our outcomes are a lagging measure of our habits. And since, of course, we can't control the things outside of our control, that's definitionally true, it makes some sense to focus on our habits. And to me, this point is just so profound because often we, and I'm going to raise my hand here, are so focused on the outcomes or the lack of outcomes. And we spend all of our time being like, oh my gosh, I haven't achieved this outcome that I want yet. But I feel like Clear is inviting us to focus on the habits themselves. I mean, of course, that's the whole point of his entire book. But just even this phrase, your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. It's this invitation to say, don't even worry about the outcomes until you've got the habits on lock. And like I said, there's a few outcomes that I'm trying to shift in my life right now. And for some time, I've been kind of frustrated with my outcomes. I've been like, I want them to be different. But over the past really 6+ months in particular, I've been realizing that I really need to shift my focus to the habits. Am I doing the right habits consistently? If I fix the habits, if I keep heating that room with good and better habits, the ice cube will melt. I will get the outcomes, the results I want. It's just a question of when. And to me, that makes me feel so much calmer, so much less anxious, so much less rushed that I don't even have to worry about the outcomes right now. I just have to make sure I get those habits in place. And of course, for all of you with active brains, I will say, of course, there is a time where we're going to have to retweak the habits because maybe we have been consistent for some time with our habits and we still don't have the outcomes we want. So we're going to need to change our approach. That totally happens. But for many of us, we never even get to that place because we're just always looking at the outcomes when we should be getting those habits on lock first. So again, I hope this gives you support when you need it, when you're on this journey and not seeing the results that you want. You might remind yourself of the sentence, which has helped me so much, which is your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. And as we end this podcast, which I didn't totally expect going into it, but ended up being kind of this mini exploration of atomic habits, I wanted to share what actually might be my favorite concept above all from that book. So in the beginning of Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about his story. He has an incredible story. He faced some very serious setbacks in his young life. He got hit in the face with a baseball bat at a baseball game or baseball practice, not just in general. He had very serious brain swelling. He had seizures. He had to learn how to do everything again, starting with walking. And he talks about how, especially during college, he overcame all of that to be quite successful academically and athletically. And he has this great moment in the book where after he's told you all these things that he's done, all the success that he found, especially in college, he acknowledges that it's not like there was anything historic or rare or legendary about the success that he achieved. But he says, looking back on those years, I believe I accomplished something just as rare. I fulfilled my potential. I fulfilled my potential. I love this distinction, that one definition of what we all yearn for, of what success truly is in its purest form, is this sense within ourselves that we have achieved our potential. I think that many of us yearn for something more or bigger, but we know that it's not some kind of necessarily like stereotypical success. It's not like we need to be wildly rich or wildly famous or powerful or something. And I think this idea that we are ultimately just trying to achieve our potential, trying to reach what's possible, what's ours to do, not necessarily what our parents or our boss or whatever thinks is our potential, but our internal sense of what is ours to do. That's such a powerful alternate thing to reach for. So I hope this podcast, I hope these ideas give you encouragement and insight that helps you achieve your potential, even when you're not seeing those results in this exact second. I'm rooting for you, my friends. I'll see you soon. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.